fully going yet.
Not fully going. I don't understand what Attack on Titan Junior High is.
Never heard of
Favorite
it.
characters from Attack on Titans are back in Junior High? Question mark? Question mark?
I ain't gonna lie, that doesn't sound appealing to me.
No, not really. I'm kind of confused by that. Also, I guess apparently in the next season of little.
All right, well, welcome back, everyone. Another episode of True Crime Junks. I'm Wes McBee, and with me as always, the
Hollis McGee.
Hollis McGee. I do have a question for you, Holly.
Yeah.
So we talked a while ago on a different podcast. That if you had the opportunity to eat human, would you do it? And I think both of us sat kind of in a similar stance where it's like we probably know until it's in front of us.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is I wouldn't go to my friend's house to eat consensual human meat.
Right.
But I don't know, if we're just sitting there, it's a vibe, and someone pulled it out, I want to say I would say no, but like, I don't know. It's not technically illegal if it's a consensual eating.
Right, because the theory that got brought up to us is like, homie loses a leg, but gets to keep it, and then one day he's like, does anyone want to try this leg?
Yeah.
Try my leg. I don't know. I think that if in the opportune moment I might. I don't know. It'd be a really weird one.
Is it okay, but is it weirder that I'd be more okay with eating my own leg than my friend's leg?
I don't know what to tell you about that one. Maybe.
I don't know, because the thing is, it's like, hi, Beaver.
Everyone likes their own.
Well, because like listen. If no one can be a simp for me, someone needs to. I'll do it. I'll fill those shoes.
Simp myself.
I'll simp on myself. But no, because like, I don't know, because it's like that idea of eating my friend just like kind of makes me queasy. But the fact of eating myself doesn't make me feel as bad because I already lost the leg. So
my biggest concern is depending on who the person was. Like they're super casual about it,
True.
But then right when you're about to put it in their mouth, they're over there like,
and then you're like,
how do I taste, sweetie?
Oh no!
And then it's like, oh fuck.
Dude, I just think of some of my stoner friends, and it reminds me of this TikTok of this girl that was like, she was so high. You saw her eyes, and you were like, damn girl, you good? Because she was so high. But anyway, so like, basically she's like, so like, if I die and someone eats me this high, am I then the edible? And so I just think of that. I'm like, I have so many stoner friends. Like, would they become my edible? I know that's not how weed works, but like, you know. I don't know. I don't know though.
One of my good friends, shout out Sephora, says that if you ever drank his blood, you'd get drunk as fuck.
I believe it. I believe any vampire would be like, damn, would just keep Forrest alive.
Fine wine. Keep him in a little system.
Keep him alive and be like, all right, Forrest, this weekend we're going to have just PBR.
You know how they like... You know how they like slow drip some wine and stuff? Yeah. They just have Forrest hanging and just slow dripping and he's just fucking pounding.
He's just pounding some more.
Anyways, our topic today, because the reason why I brought that up, is we're going to go over Jeffrey, the Milwaukee Cannibal Dahmer.
Yes.
One of the, I always say every episode I seem to do, maybe aside from a couple, H.H. Holmes was a little underwhelming until we got to like the murder castle.
Yeah.
I have to say, Dahmer is one of the most interesting serial killers we covered for the sheer reason you can go watch interviews with him from the 90s.
Yeah.
He's intelligent like a lot of their serial killers, but he puts no blame except himself.
Yeah, the one of the few that have like literally just been like, I guess I did that.
Yeah.
Like, what can I say?
And it's really, I don't know. His childhood was interesting, and his teens are interesting, which we'll get into. But
yeah,
you know what we have to start with, right?
A good old joke, because you know what. One thing I do have to say, though, because Dahmer, he ate people, of course, but, like, his favorite parts were the thighs and the hearts, and, you know what, I agree. I love eating some good thighs and eating to people's hearts.
Right, you got to. You got to.
But, also, I don't eat people, don't come for me. But, yeah. I forgot that I was going to wear, like, a short sleeve shirt to, like, show off my tattoos, to be like, he can't eat me because I, like, have tattoos, which I think is a very interesting...
Was that one of his things?
That was one of his things where he said that, like, the meat tastes weird, so he never went for people that had tattoos.
Oh.
That's, like, the meme of people being like, I'm okay, no cannibals will eat me because I have tattoos now.
That makes sense.
The same way I like to think that if someone wanted me for my skin, they wouldn't do it because I have tattoos and they might stretch it out. But also, it might be more enticing because then it's like already printed leather.
True.
I'm just curious on how that would look.
So you're more worried about some Hannibal Lecter, Buffalo Bill, like wearing your skin. Damn, and he'd be like, "Look at my new tattoos."
They're like, "Look at my elbows." They'll be like, "That's an interesting patch on your jacket," and they're like, "Thank you. I got them done myself."
So I do have to say, so for people who don't know, you have some bee tattoos.
Yeah.
I did see something really hilarious that when I saw it, I was like, oh, I feel like Holly would like this.
Yeah.
You get bees on your knees.
I thought about doing that.
And it's the bee's knees.
It's the bee's knees.
And I was like, fuck, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I like this one. This girl has Dan DeVito, and then it's Danny DeVito.
I saw that. I was like, oh.
That's iconic.
Danny DeVito is the Lord and Savior.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I've been thinking about getting a Danny DeVito tattoo.
Listen, you're already at the limit, or you're already at the peak performance level. That would only skyrocket.
I know. I was thinking, because I'd get it on my leg, obviously. I wouldn't want it, like, out and about. But, like, I would definitely get Danny DeVito on my leg. But, like, I don't know what kind of Danny DeVito I'd want on my leg.
You gotta... Listen, I feel like Frank Reynolds' Danny DeVito is prime Danny DeVito. Yeah.
I was thinking... What I was genuinely thinking, I may or may not have been drunk when I was thinking it. That's besides the point. But what if I got, Oscar from Sesame Street, the one in the trash can? I was thinking about, like, what if I got, like, a trash can with Danny DeVito? And
he's a trash man.
And he's a trash man.
I was legit going to tell you that on my list of tattoos I want is a trash man tattoo.
I was thinking about that.
Just him in the singlet with his arms ready to...
I'm the trash man.
I'm the trash man.
Because, like... There was one time I was talking to Cass, and there was, like, this saying that was, like, so perfect. I don't remember the phrase. It's, like, a meme phrase. And for some reason, we've never said it or thought of it ever again. But I was going to get that tattooed on my foot, so now I'm thinking about, like, iconic meme quotes to put on my foot. Like, just, like, on the side. So it's not very noticeable, but when people are like, oh, do you have a foot tattoo? And then I can be like, yes, it's this.
And I think you should get Pootly Voodoo tattooed.
Voodoo. I probably, honestly, what I would also do, like, next to the trash can one is do a heart, and it's, like, Pootly Voodoo forever.
Yeah.
But like the 4 and ever.
Because if you don't know what voodoo is,
you're missing out. You need to Google some shit.
So, anyways, back
Jeffrey
to our
Dahmer.
Good old Dahmer. Why don't you tell me a little bit about this individual's growing up? Because it's really not. Aside from some key things that we definitely look at now for serial killers, it really wasn't that damning.
All right. Sorry, I'm just so thirsty. So he was born May 21st, 1960. I've been thinking about also going back to all the killers we've done and finding all their zodiac signs. I'm just genuinely curious. I'm not a zodiac person, but
I'm not either.
I kind of low-key want to know.
I think a lot of them are actually the same. While you're giving us some information, I'll do a little research.
Hell yeah. So he was the first of 2 sons from Joyce and Leneal? Well, Herbert. Let's call him Herbert. So he was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So apparently, as a mom, Dahmer's mom, Joyce, had quite a lot of issues. It was reported that, like, because Dahmer is the oldest out of the 2 boys, he was, like, kind of deprived of attention as an infant. Like, he was, like, generally, like, cared for and loved on, but, like, also knew that, like, his mom was very needy and greedy for attention and pity and liked to, like, fight with her husband a lot. So she had a lot of issues, and then she kind of started getting a little bit sick, whether it was kind of more mentally sick or physically sick, kind of hard to say. Mostly because she also suffered from depression. She was very anxious, and she'd get, like, really worked up over trivial matters, especially with her husband. And was actually known to have attempted suicide. And like also his dad was a full-time parent, like full-time worker, so his dad was barely there. So it kind of sounds like something that's kind of different from Dahmer is just having absentee parents.
Yeah. But on the flip side, his parents did love him, and it does show in a bunch of different ways that are relevant later on.
Yeah, and it definitely does show because, because like I think that the hard part is like I don't think Dahmer's parents wanted to be together anymore, which obviously they did end up getting divorced later, and to like basically right when he graduates college or high school, basically is when I think they get divorced. But yeah, so his mom had some like issues. But Dahmer was known to be an energetic and happy child. He then had a double hernia surgery around his 4th birthday, and he was kind of like quiet and timid. He was always the most quiet and timid in school, didn't really like talk a lot, but like...
They do say that surgery actually may have been a big, like, a real bad thing for Dahmer in an early age, because they said after it is when he became super timid, super shy, super like put off.
Quiet. Yeah. And also too, like, teachers were noted that like it seemed like Dahmer, like, yeah, his parents loved him, but kind of was abandoned, because kind of when he joined the 1st grade is when his brother was born, but like his mom was already kind of like ill, so she like kind of was bedridden a lot of the time, so she didn't really do much. But nonetheless, he did have some friends, obviously, in elementary school, and he had friends in middle school, and he had friends in high school. But obviously, from an early age, Dahmer was very much interested in dead animals. He collected large insects, put them in jars. Then he started collecting animal carcasses, not corpses, but carcasses. Sometimes with a friend, they would find the bodies together. Just as I feel like, you see a dead animal and you're like, wow, that's actually dead.
Yeah, and he, specifically Dahmer, is the reason why when children are found doing these things, it starts getting looked into deeper if he is struggling with stuff, because later on we find that Dahmer has taken the practice that he was doing as a kid and evolved it into a much more sinister and disturbing practice as an adult. Yeah. But it's hard to say, right? It's hard to say that if what he did with these corpses and insects and stuff as a kid was the reason why he did the things that he did as an adult. I personally don't think so, but I do think it played a role in his rituals that made him be able to mentally do the things he did and perform the acts that he did.
Yeah, well, especially because the way he was, like, also using the animal carcasses, because at first it was just, like, he was fascinated in the way that, like, they worked and they got put together, like, kind of like a puzzle piece. And then, so he liked, like, figuring out how they fit together, and, like, and then, but, like, apparently, like, his dad remembers a time when Dahmer was, like, 4 years old, and he, like, was finding, like, skeleton remains under the house,
right,
and, like, cleaned them up, and, like, that Dahmer was, like, oddly thrilled by the sound the bones make together.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, yeah, you can make that as a point, but also that's a 4-year-old, and sounds are sounds.
Right, and that's the thing is, like, you know, when we research serial killers and we try and look back in hindsight, like, what made them the way they are, like, things like that, like, will be off-putting to hear, but if you try and put yourself in, like, a 4 or 6-year-old shoes, right, like, think about kids who go hunting. Yeah. You know, that's totally fine, and they see, like, if you're skinning the animal and mutilating like, harvesting the animals, you know, meat and leather and stuff like that, that could be a super disturbing thing to see, but we're okay with that if they're just not a serial killer.
Yeah, well, I think too then that and I think like the biggest difference between that and what Dahmer was doing was also the 4-year-old part. I was just like, okay, whatever. But because I agree with what you're saying, but I think then it's when it became when he was older, because I think when you're hunting and stuff, it's for food and human like survival. But what Dahmer was then doing was, like, he then, like, one time, like, cut the head of a dog off, nailed the dog's body to a tree, and then crushed the skull. So I think that's where it's, like...
Right. What I was saying is, like, you know, to a young child, like, hearing the noises, but Dahmer definitely takes it to a different level, because it wasn't just, like, hey, we're going to go hunt this elk. Yeah. He was, like, killing pets and...
whatever
animals that socially is not acceptable.
Yeah, exactly. And then in October 1966, the family moved to Ohio, Dolanstown, Ohio, where then Joyce gave birth to the youngest son, David. And then that's when also his dad got his degree and started working as an analytical chemist.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, which is also a big part into Dahmer's teen years. So basically, Dahmer had a very basic childhood.
Moved around a couple times.
Moved around a few times. Had a dad that was in school trying to make the best for their family, that loved him, but like also had a mom that had so many mental disorders but loved him but tried her best.
I do think, to kind of go off of his childhood a little bit, one key factor that I do think plays a role that he just doesn't want to admit, or didn't want to admit, because Dahmer is dead, we'll get into that later, is that his dad being absent, you know, not in a negative way, right? His dad was trying to, like, do the best he could for the family.
Yeah.
But him not being around, I think, did play a role later on in life, because his first victim, he's even quoted saying something along the lines of, the reason why I killed him is because I just didn't want him to leave me.
Yeah. And
I really think that has to harken back somewhere in his mind to, like, his dad never being around. Like, he didn't want his dad to always be gone.
And also, I think also that leaving part actually goes into his teen years, which I'll get to in just a second. Because also, with his dad being an alchemist, there was a time where Dahmer asked just a simple question of, like, so, like, what would happen if you bleached chicken bones? And then his dad actually gave him a tutorial of how to preserve skeletons, basically, with all that stuff. And during that time also, too, then the mom was taking even more, like, laxatives, sleeping pills, and drugs. And then you get to his freshman year of high school, which he went to Revere High School, which he was known as being an outcast, started drinking at a really young age.
It just plays a big role.
Yeah. At the age of 14, but so basically at the age of 14, before is when he was dismembering, preserving, and playing with dead animals. Just to put it in perspective, kind of like this kid had too much alone time.
Yeah.
Then he got into high school, and then he started drinking beer and hard alcohol in the daylight hours. Most of the time, drunk at school, and would also call it his medicine to other students. Yeah, but other than that, he was still like an average student. The teachers and students just saw him as a polite, quiet, highly intelligent kid. Yeah. He even played sports.
He was like a pretty outstanding tennis player, right?
Yeah, he was a really good tennis player.
He was in choir or band or something for a stint too.
Yeah, he had a pretty normal childhood and like a pretty average high school life. But then when he reached puberty is when he realized that he was gay. And that really was hard for Dahmer because then, because he tried, he actually even tried to have like a brief relationship with another teen boy. They never had intercourse, but like it wasn't what Dahmer actually wanted it to be because even at such a young age, he like imagined and wanted to be more of having a controlled and like have a submissive partner.
Yeah.
And be the one in control and then those eventually that dumb personality then turned into a intertwined with dissection fantasy because
and then turned into like later on into like necrophilia and some other
horrible things that we can get into. But then so once he was about 16, he used to used to be a jogger in his neighborhood that would always jog down the street, and he always fantasized about that particular jogger, and he found him very attractive. And then like actually one time had a baseball bat, was planning on attacking him, but that one day the jogger actually didn't go down the street.
Yeah. So
Dahmer wasn't able to get him. So like even at a young age he was having very bad fantasies and impulses is what I would say, almost as impulses. Because that would be his first attempt to ever try to attack somebody was when he was 16. But I'll get a little bit into My Friend Dahmer, which is an account of someone else's best friend from high school who was best friends with Dahmer.
Yeah.
And remembers Dahmer as... I remember this, like the author of the book, when Dahmer got caught, one of the friend group basically called him up and he was like, "You'll never guess who is a cannibal and a serial killer from our high school." And the guy was like naming all these people and he's like, "Oh, it has to be this." And they're like, "No, it's Dahmer." And he's like, "No, you're fucking with me. Like, who is it really?" And they're like, "No, it's Jeffrey Dahmer." And like the guy like was in such a shock by it that he ended up writing this comic and then eventually came into a movie. But in the movie you can definitely see Dahmer spiral down because he then started like acting out in school. Like he would pretend that he's like mentally disabled and like have fits just to like get a laugh out of these. Right. So they weren't really like friends with him, but not really friends with him.
It was a weird dynamic.
It was a weird dynamic where they were homies, but they also like saw him and like they knew he drank all the time and like there was like kind of like the weird kid. So like they didn't really know how to be friends with him, but like
they were close enough.
They were close enough, but they also still kind of used him as like the laughing joke.
Right.
To be honest, but
he was like the punchline.
Yeah, he was like. Then he became kind of like the class clown and did pranks, and then actually had like a thing with like called Doing a Dahmer, and that's when he like would act very much out, and then eventually his grades, because he was drinking all the time and doing all that stuff, and obviously is very conflicted with his sexual urges and like all that stuff, that he his grades started to decline. But also at home his parents were trying to save their marriage, which then the father found out the mom was having an affair, and they decided to have an divorce. A divorce? Or they decided to get divorced. And
sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, no, you're good. And then the dad moved out. And then basically, then in May of 1978, he graduated And let's see.
I can kind of take over a little bit from there.
Yeah, well, because this is where I think the abandonment comes from, is then, like, when he graduated, the dad already moved out, and then the mom just basically up and took his brother, and then just booted out, too, just left Dahmer there.
Right.
Which is mind-blowing to me. First of all, besides the fact that you're just leaving your just barely 18 graduated son, who leaves a whole house to a teenager?
Right, that would be so bad.
So bad. You one thing, it's like your father's gone, but then like
there's no. Yeah. It's a weird situation and
really weird, because that's where I'll stop it because like so basically when Dahmer turned 18 and just graduated, in the movie, and well, the movie exaggerates it, but like it looked like Dahmer was actually about to attack one of the friends that he used to be friends with. But basically what happened was, as soon as he turned 18, he already had a drug alcohol problem. He already had all these sexual desire problems. His dad left, who was like his only support at the time. And then his mom took her and her brother and then just left him in this house alone.
Yeah.
And then it's like, what the fuck do you do now?
Yeah, it's a weird thing because like that's one of the details that I just don't understand, because soon after Dahmer graduated and he was left alone, he enrolled into the university, or Ohio State University.
Yeah.
And they never really explain if like that house was like in foreclosure or because of the divorce, like they were splitting it, or how that works. But there was a time where he was just living on his own, and then later on he's living on his own alone again, but he gets shipped off, which I'll get to that. I do want to say before we dive into his adulthood, because that's the area that I'm always fascinated with, because we've seen so many parallels so far. Keep in mind that this is the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah,
right?
This would be 78.
Right, and homosexuality is still very taboo and not openly like accepted at the level it is today, right? Like, there's still people who don't accept it, which they need to get educated more, but in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, like it was still very it's taboo. It wasn't a normal thing to be homosexual. And even in Dahmer, I think Dahmer's last interview, or one of his last interviews, he says that he hated being homosexual. Like that could have been one of the driving factors that ruined his life. And it's really sad to hear that. Now, I don't think that that's the whole cause of why he did what he did, but the fact that, this guy says that was a problem, I really think does point, that society may have had an impact on him doing what he did. And if you guys want, you can go over to YouTube and watch his interview. I think it's from Inside On, is the people who did it. It is a wonderful interview, but super haunting, because it really puts into perspective everything I'm going to talk about. It shows him like talking with this lady, like as far apart as Holly and I are, like, and he is very articulate and very self-conscious and self-aware, and it's a little creepy. Yeah,
it's very uncomfortable. But before you get into like, are you going to talk about his first murder?
Yeah.
Okay, but he honestly, I love. Out of everyone who's watched their interviews, Dahmer's is my favorite, mostly because the thing is, he just blatantly says it, because he's like, I don't know, I feel like the reason why, like, I feel like Dahmer's, I don't want to say like one of my favorites, but one of the ones that I find very interesting is
one of the most fascinating
ones is like, he's probably one of the ones that was so highly educated and yet took full blame and was able to cautiously talk about it and not deny it at all. Because if you think back to like our OG episode, Gacy was still kind of denying it basically to the end. Bundy was going to deny it to the end. Ramirez was too crazy to talk about really what's happening.
The closest person in a lot of realities is Kemper.
Kemper is also like why I find him very fascinating.
He's hyper intelligent, and he knew he was a menace to society. Same with Dahmer, where Dahmer says like, I consciously knew sometimes that what I was doing was very bad. Yeah, like he knew, and like, but the thing is, that's why I'm very more fascinated with those two, because it's like the fact that they knew and they can consciously tell other people and like, I guess like almost like help society understand. Yeah, and, like, I mean, without some of these guys' openness to discuss it, we still might struggle worse with serial killers. Like, we might be getting a lot of things wrong because like we're just guessing because we don't have the obvious first person. Yeah, with these accounts, we don't have because a lot of serial killers don't talk to media and press, but some of them do, and they really have helped us as a society be able to either help kids at a young age who show similar attributes or at least give us clues to like stop ones later on. And will we ever get to a point in society where there are no serial killers? No, but no way. I imagine that the number will get smaller and smaller as time goes on. Yeah. Oh, of course. But anyways, back to Dahmer's early adulthood to adulthood. So I think drinking is one of the biggest things we have to point out in this. Dahmer was drunk a lot of the time. And especially starting drinking at 14 and then towards especially his senior year when he was 17, 18, he was drunk every hour of the hour. Yep, and even into some of his murders that he talks about, he says there's 4 to 6 hours worth of time that he doesn't remember. And to me, that sounds like he was so fucked up that he blacked out and did some horrible things. At least that's how I think he wants it to be interpreted. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's a reality or not, but drinking has been a cause the cause of a lot of problems for Dahmer. So, like I said, Dahmer graduated high school and he enrolled into Ohio State University. He spent most of the time there skipping classes and getting drunk. Yeah. He probably had the intelligence to graduate fully, but he just was kind of he wanted to drink, and he kind of sounded like he was at a stage of like, got that loser mentality outlook. And he returned home only after 2 semesters, so give or take about a year. After returning home to his father's place, and the divorce that we talked about was taking a toll on Dahmer, his father gave him an ultimatum, and he basically said, hey, listen, you either get a job or you join the army. So in 1979, Dahmer enlisted for 6 years into the army. Yeah. But his drinking problem did lead him to getting discharged in 1981. Damn. So just 2 years into his 6 years. And all the accounts say it was 100% due to his drinking problems. He would get fucked up and just cause a ruckus. And you can't have that. Obviously. Now here's the interesting thing about it. Okay, Dahmer's first kill was before he joined the army. Yeah. And this was in 1978. He picked up an 18-year-old, Stephen H. Like I said on here, I personally don't like to use last names just because I feel like, I don't know, gives too much power. But if you guys don't like that, I can start using last names later on. A hitchhiker that was trying to go to a rock show. Okay. And Dahmer has talked about like fantasies of picking up hitchhikers and he already wanted them. He even had that plan of attack that one time when he was 16 with the jogger, which is so wild to think that if that jogger was there that day, like where would it have gone to now? Yeah. Now Dahmer does create a very processed out system of how he goes about getting his victims. And it started with Steven, and basically he pulled up to this guy and was like, hey, you want on a ride? I got some beers. You want to go drink a couple beers with me, hang out? Like, pretty casual stuff, right? Yeah. And the teenager the 18-year-old Steven was like, oh yeah, for sure. But here's the problem. When Steven wanted to leave, Dahmer wasn't okay with that. Dahmer wanted him to stay forever. Yep. So Dahmer decided to bash his head in with a barbell and killed him, and then cut up his body and buried it in the woods. And then later, because Dahmer he was conscious enough of his crimes that he went back, dug up the body, stripped it of its flesh, broke down the bones into dust, dissolved the flesh away, and then sprinkled the bone dust everywhere so he could hide his crimes. Yeah. And like I said earlier, in a later interview, he claimed the reason he killed this young man was that he simply didn't want him to leave. And it's tough. I really think that harkens back to just not having anyone in his life that has stayed for a long period of time. Yeah, especially because it was so fresh after his mom just basically abandoned him. Right. Because in the movie, that's why I'm just saying, in the movie and the comic, it kind of made it seem like
basically Dahmer's like, wait, why are you leaving me? And then his mom's like, well, you got your father.
Yeah.
But it's like, then he obviously didn't have his father because then he was left alone. So it was just kind of like a, and then of course taking your younger brother and not him as well, it kind of is like also like a slap to the face.
And it's interesting too because I think that Dahmer, if you look at his list of victims, there's a lot of very similar things, right? They're all men.
All men.
And 10 of 18 of them are African American. And he was quoted, I don't know the direct quote, but he was saying that he picked his victims based off of their attractiveness. So he only went after people that he found highly attractive. So in my eyes, it's impossible to put your head in the mind of a serial killer, right? I wonder if like this first situation was like him like trying to have a homosexual experience with another man and maybe have sex, or like maybe this was his awkward way of trying to bond with somebody.
Yeah.
And when they decided that he wanted to go, that he just killed him and wanted to keep him there forever.
Yeah.
And that goes to that goes into some more darker topics where he keeps stuff. But and I do want to give like a kind of a disclaimer going forward that, you know, Dahmer did do a lot of horrible things to these victims and their bodies. So if you're not okay hearing some, you know, pretty gross things, like I understand, and this goes from necrophilia, which is the having sex with a dead body, cannibalism, he did eat humans, and I'll get into that later, and even going as far as keeping skulls, genitalia, organs, different things like this. And, you know, it's, in my eyes, it was like trophies and keepsakes for him, because he just had this overwhelming desire to never let people leave. Like, he wanted that full control. He wanted that. It sounded to me like he wanted to be able to control individuals, not just in like a dom submissive sexual way, but like control them to like stay with him and be with him forever and just like give him the attention that he wants. But he just didn't know how to do that. And then on top of drinking, because he claims he doesn't remember killing a lot of these people. Yeah,
especially with his second victim.
Yeah.
It really shows like his alcoholism being an issue.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, the homosexuality in this time period was not as culturally accepted as it is today. And I think that drinking, struggling with that, you know, abandonment issues, and then this weird fascination with corpses and bodies and carcasses, I think that is just too much for a human brain to roll with. Yeah,
to fully function as a human.
Right. So, like I said, this was before he joined the military. He did this, schooling, all that. Dad gave him an ultimatum. He joined the army, got discharged. Okay. So after he got discharged is when things get even more bizarre, but not in the ways that we are, that are more public, right? So he got into a lot of trouble with the police and did some pretty vile things aside from the obvious.
Obviously.
So he got in a disorderly conduct charge. And that is when Dahmer, because he was staying with his dad at this point again, or I think he was staying at the house and the dad was kind of there. It's like it's a little blurry as far as that goes. But Dahmer's dad was pretty much like, hey, like, go live with your grandparents. You can't be here alone. Like, I don't know what to do with you type of situation. That's how I looked at it. And he was still drinking super heavy, like daily, lots of alcohol consumption. And then Dahmer got arrested in 1982 after exposing himself at a state fair. So I don't know how that looks, but you can think of like trench coat, flash and type thing. And then in 86, so 4 years later, he was arrested and charged with public exposure and was accused of masturbating in public. He then served 10 months in jail, but when he got out, he got arrested again shortly after for sexually fondling a 13-year-old boy. So now to rack on to murder, we have pedophilia.
Yeah.
And public masturbation and exposing himself.
Yeah.
So he really is just
it's kind of a jack of all trades. Like what else can you do?
Right. And I do have to say, like, we've talked about how the legal systems and court systems and police forces have fucked up.
Yeah.
I really think they did a piss poor job of this one because he was given only 5 years probation after convincing the judge that he needed therapy. And listen, do people need therapy? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Could therapy have potentially helped him? Maybe.
Possibly.
But we let a guy who has had multiple charges now of public exposure, masturbating in public, and touching a young child.
A predator at this point.
A predator at this point just kind of go.
Yeah, and not kind of give a fuck about it, which is very interesting to me because, like, with Gacy, he had his issues, he had his things, but at least with Gacy, it was that one offense that the police knew of.
Yeah.
And he went to jail, and then he moved to a different city. That's why they didn't have that connection. This one is multiple misdemeanors.
Right. Multiple.
Right?
They're very aware of who Dahmer is.
Yes. So it's like,
right.
Yeah.
So now going into late 1987, that's when things really start getting crazier.
Yeah.
Dahmer is currently on probation for the molestation charge, but this doesn't stop him from starting one of the most infamous murder sprees in American history, and that's starting with the 26-year-old Stephen T., who was the second known victim in this spree. I don't go into all of the murders specifically, just highlight some of the more, the key, like the biggest ones that we have knowledge on. So what happened with Stephen was they met up one way or the other. They cruised some gay bars together. They were drinking super heavily, and then they went back to a hotel, which I think is infamously known as like Ambassador Hotel or something like that. He always stated that in interviews, like for some reason that it specifically that hotel.
Like for some reason that hotel was like special kind of, but like it was that was the hotel.
Yeah.
It was in his memory.
So in interviews, Dahmer talks about how when this happened and when he murdered this guy, that he just remembers waking up from like a drunken night and stumbling in to find Stephen dead. And Dahmer claims to have no recollection of how he killed him, and it was all due to him being extremely drunk.
Yeah.
Now, some speculations and things that he's mentioned, right, is like he was super into like domination, so maybe they messed around and he, beat him to death is what he says probably happened, or strangled him to death.
Yeah. Well, because we're talking about the second murder, right?
Yeah.
From what it sounded like from the interviews and my research it happened is he was kind of like so drunk that he didn't he didn't even fully comprehend that he was like beating the shit out of this guy and like harming him and strangling him. Like it almost just seemed like he wasn't even fully cognitive of what he did until he woke up in the morning.
Right.
Like he was just going so hard in the paint, and like some animal instinct kind of came over him that like when he woke up he was like, oh yeah, this is what happened.
Well, and we've both, I mean, this is True Crime Drunks. It's called that for a reason. We've both had our own drunken adventures and things, and when you get to a certain level of drunk, like you definitely, your ambitions are lowered, like you may do things that you don't typically do. And I'm not saying that in like a let's murder some people.
Yeah, like it's an excuse thing. But like I understand what you mean, because like definitely when I'm drunk, I somehow always end up sitting on sinks. Yeah. Or inside of a sink. Yeah. I just like to be on sinks. Right. I don't know. I just like to be in places where I shouldn't be when I'm drunk.
So I think that if we escalate that knowledge to a Dahmer situation, I think that when he's as fucked up as he is, that's when the true Dahmer comes out and his true desires show, and he just acts upon them.
Yeah, and I think that's just kind of what came from it, because also all of his conducts happened when he was drunk.
So this is the part that gets gross in my opinion, but he ended up getting this body out of the hotel.
Somehow.
Well, he put the body in a suitcase.
Oh, I forgot.
His grandma's suitcase or grandparents' suitcase or something like that. He dismembered it. He did horrible things to it, which I'm not going to name. You guys can, figure that out. It's tough because I've talked about this on a previous episode where, there's a level of disturbing to me. Like my bar is really high as far as like things I have researched and look into, but something about doing stuff with corpses really bothers me.
Yeah.
Like, to a different level. And, a lot of people theorize that the reason why Dahmer continued doing this is because he just had this fascination of dead bodies. Because what's the most submissive thing someone can do? Be dead.
Yeah.
And, he definitely did a lot of things to bodies, from mutilation to necrophilia to, harvesting organs and body parts. And like, to me, that's just, I'm sure to everyone that's fucked up. So it just, it's one of those things for me. It's hard to talk about. I get like super clammy and like uncomfortable, but it's a very important part of the story because a lot of people think that was what continued this spree, is like he, in lack of a better words, fell in love with doing it.
Yeah. Well, and it just makes sense because he was doing it already at such a young age. Yeah. And then he had the knowledge from his father, which I bet his father, low-key, looks back and was like, probably not a good idea.
Yeah, right.
But not that it's anyone's fault, but the person who did it. But I'm just saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So, going into his other murders and stuff, like I said earlier, he definitely followed a pattern. Like, he had a process. He created a process for getting victims. And what that looked like is he would go to malls, gay bars, well-known like gay cruising areas, and he would entice individuals with free alcohol or money to come pose for pictures for him. Whether, I imagine, some sort of sexual pictures. And like I said, right, like he went after people he found super attractive. But once they were alone, he would drug them either with, the alcohol or other drinks, or just being like, hey, this is something that it's not. Torture them, abuse them, and then kill them, usually by strangulation. Yeah. And then, side note, along with, and I mentioned this earlier, but along with skulls and other parts that I'm not going to talk about, that he would collect and keep as like trophies, he would take some organs and occasionally eat them.
Yeah, he was very inclined to eat, hearts, thighs, and other organs. Yeah, and very Hannibal Lecter style.
Yes, and that's how he's known to be the cannibal killer, and everyone thinks cannibalism when they think of Dahmer. And it was very interesting because he has talked about why he decided to eat them. And boy, let me tell you, if it doesn't give you chills, I don't know what will. He basically said like him consuming someone like that is like keeping a part of their soul close to him.
Which takes a whole new level of abandonment issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel like I'm a broken record when I say like when we do new people, I'm like, can this get worse and worse? And it just always does.
It somehow always does. But I also wonder if it's not that it gets worse and worse. It just gets it's so different. It's like, it's just things that I never would have thought about. I never would. Because the thing is, it's like, maybe that's like somehow some vegans feel like when they eat animals, that's why they don't eat animals, because like it's part of so you're eating someone that has a soul. Like, I don't think of it that way, but like the idea of eating a person to get their soul is just so. It's almost like a fantasy to me. Like, it's almost so like.
Sounds like fiction.
Fiction. It's so fiction. Yeah. Like, I would read that in like a Game of Thrones book, like some witch or like not Game of Thrones, but like.
Yeah, no,
like,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
like it's just
this doesn't seem like a fucking reality, and this. No. And to put it in complete, like, hit close to home. Yeah. Dahmer wasn't caught until 91.
91.
I was born 3 years after that.
Yeah, you were.
This isn't too far off from where we are now.
No, this was 91. If you got caught in 91, that was 30 years ago now. Yeah. Only 30 years ago. Yeah. That's considered young.
There's TV. He was on TV.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't...
There's full interviews that, like, are really good interviews.
This is shit that sounds like you're reading, like, the 1300s. Like, some fucking king wanted to eat hearts because he thought it made him more powerful or some shit. This was legit not that long ago, people.
Literally 30 years ago.
So, from June of 1978 all the way to July of 1991, there was 17 known murder victims. And a lot of people do believe that number is much higher. Of course. I personally believe that his victim list, whether not murders, is definitely way higher than that.
Oh, yeah.
I have a feeling that he was doing shit to people that they didn't want to have done to them.
Anyways. Way
higher than 17, but we know, and he accounts of 17 murders specifically. And I'm going to skip over, like I said, a lot of the murders just to save time and kind of get to the more important parts. And by no way do I want that to... Like I said, I don't use full names, so I just want you guys to remember that I try to keep it as respectful as possible to victims.
Yeah.
And it's a tough space to be in with it.
And it's also hard, too, because the thing is... If we went into, I just don't feel super, not that I don't feel comfortable talking about it, but, like, I just don't want to, like, also talk about the nooks and cranny of what he did to every victim, because the thing is, it was pretty horrific, and, like, also, too, like, you don't, it's almost like a not need to know basis, like, you don't need to know every little detail.
I feel like I've gave enough information so you have an idea of how all of them went down.
Yeah, and if you were really... Curious.
More than welcome. There's tons of research.
Oh, tons of research. And the thing is, I've seen so many documentaries that, like, I don't know, also, too, the way Dahmer did it made me uncomfortable. Yeah.
Oh, and we're going to get even more uncomfortable here soon when we find out what was in his apartment. So, starting on June 30th of 1991, this is now post, like, 14th victim, I believe. Dahmer began killing one person a week.
Yeah, very greedy.
Yep, and he put them all through the same ritual as I've said before. Killing, dissecting, collecting parts of their bodies. Okay, and, you know, we can harken back to when he was a child and doing very similar things. It's almost like he went full circle and is now doing something that he's comfortable with, like when he learned as a child. Because like we've talked about before, like, when you start taking on hobbies as a kid, you'll always do them when you're older.
Yeah, no, you know, I agree.
However that looks like, if it's cartoons, anime, right, or collecting cards. For me, like, I still collect Pokemon cards, and I'm almost 30. Like, you keep certain things that you loved as a child to kind of keep that childlike innocence.
Yeah, like for me, it's painting. Like, I'm not good at painting, but like. I used to love, like, not blood splatter, like paint splatter.
Yeah, paint splatter.
But, like, with red, it looks like blood splatter.
Holly's over here giving our first insight of when she gets caught.
I know. Oh, no, don't come to me. Don't come to my apartment, fam. But like, that kind of mentality is, like, even though I'm not, like, a really good painter and I'm not a really good artist, like, I still like to paint once in a blue moon. Like, even if I'm just painting furniture, it just gives me such joy because it reminds me of when I was a child. Right. Even though Dahmer's is... morbid.
Yes, very morbid.
And fucked up, but...
So, in late July of that year, of 1991, Dahmer had picked up his 18th victim by the name of Tracy E. Now, Tracy is a big role player here, okay? He is the only person to ever escape Dahmer. Yeah. If it wasn't Dahmer letting them go, because there was one incident where... Dahmer's grandparents found out someone was there, and Dahmer let that person go.
Yeah, because he was like...
Yeah. But Tracy was the first person to finally escape him. And how it went down is Dahmer had picked him up with the same offers as the other victims and had tried to handcuff Tracy. A fight ensued, and Tracy was able to escape. He was later found by the police. He was, like, walking down the road or running down the road, and they saw, like, dangling handcuffs, like he was still handcuffed partially.
And then the police are like, well, you're either running from the police or something's going on.
Yeah, so they picked him up, and Tracy explained the story, and that's when the police went directly to Dahmer's place. And this is where it goes to show, like I said, if you go watch the interview, how calm and articulate Dahmer was. Dahmer answered the door. Everything was perfectly fine. He answered all the questions the police had asked. and then calmly was grabbing the keys to the handcuffs. And at this time, the police are inside, and they're kind of like, oh, okay, you guys were doing some weird shit. Like, they didn't fully, like, I imagine they expected something was going on, but they weren't there to arrest.
No, they were more just, like, making sure there's nothing awry, I guess.
Well, this is when the police kind of were looking around, and they noticed pictures of what appeared to be body parts and pictures of refrigerators filled with human skulls.
Yeah.
So they decided and finally made a great decision because, like I said earlier, I really felt like the police have dropped the ball pretty hard.
Anyways,
They placed him under arrest, and this is when Dahmer snapped. He lost his calm mentality, and he was fighting back, screaming, just because he knew.
He knew he was done.
He knew he was done. They detained him did a brief search of his place, and that's where they did find various body parts and Dahmer's collection of literally his whole entire crime history, because he would take tons of pictures. But that's not the wild part. I mean, that's super wild, but here's the bigger thing, right? They did a deeper search of his apartment. Now, to give you a backstory of how he got his apartment, it's kind of interesting. He left his grandparents because he got a job at Milwaukee Chocolate Factory, and he was a mixer.
Yeah.
So strange. But he made enough money to be able to live at his own apartment. Tiny little apartment. You can see it in interviews and stuff. But it allowed him to freely do all this stuff without the concern of his parents. I think they kicked him out because they kept finding him with men, and they said that like shit stunk in the house because there was just body parts hanging out.
And later accounts of people in that apartment complex will say, no, we smelled something odd, but it wasn't like decaying bodies because he was trying to obviously preserve a lot of them. So that there was always a weird smell at Dahmer's house, but like not weird enough to call the police. It was just more of like he's a weird dude.
Maybe he's making some weird fucking food.
Yeah, like, and also too, maybe they like saw him with a camera and they're like, oh, maybe some photography thing, like he's doing like negatives or something.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I don't know what that smells like, obviously, but maybe they knew because it's that.
Just remember, now that we're in 2021, if something seems weird, probably just give a call.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it's never like if it's nothing, then it's nothing, but it could be something.
Yes.
So anyways, I do want to before I go down this list, I want to give a shout out to a great source that I used for this episode.
Ooh.
It's thoughtcode.com. They did a wonderful job at giving a full detailed story of Dahmer and compiling this list of stuff that was found.
Cool.
So when the police went in and did their full search, this is what was confiscated from the apartment. A human head and 3 bags of organs, which included 2 hearts, were found in the refrigerator. 3 heads, a torso, and various internal organs were inside a freestanding freezer. Chemicals, formaldehyde, ether, and chloroform, plus 2 skulls, 2 hands, and male genitalia were found in the closet. A filing cabinet that contained 3 painted skulls, a skeleton, a dried scalp. Excuse me, I lost where I was in my list. A filing cabinet that contained 3 painted skulls, a skeleton, a dried scalp, male genitalia, and various photographs of his victims. A box with 2 skulls inside. A 57-gallon vat filled with acid and 3 torsos. Victims' identifications. Bleach used to bleach the skulls and bones, which his dad probably taught him. Incense sticks. Neighbors often complained to Dahmer about the smell coming from his apartment. Tools, claw hammer, handsaw, 3H drill, 1/16 drill bits. Hypodermic needle, various videos, some pornographic. Blood-soaked mattress and blood splatters, and King James Bible.
What an apartment tour.
Yeah. Whoa, what a warm welcoming.
Whoa, my God. I couldn't even imagine going into the house. I'd instantly be like, my mom's calling.
Yeah, sorry, bye. A new phone, who dis?
New phone. I don't need the money anymore. I'm going to see you later.
Yeah. So as you can imagine, Jeffrey Dahmer was indicted on 17 murders, which was reduced to 15. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Much of the testimony was based on Dahmer's 160-page confession and from various witnesses who testified that Dahmer's necrophilia urges were so strong that he was not in control of his actions. The defense sought to prove that he was in control and capable of planning, manipulating, and covering up his crimes. The jury deliberated for 5 hours, which is very short.
Very short.
That's record speed. Verdict of guilty on 15 counts of murder. Dahmer was sentenced to 15 life terms, a total of 937 years in prison. At his sentencing, Dahmer calmly read his 4-page statement to the court, which I'll read a little snippet from it. Mm-hmm. He apologized for his crimes and ended with, "I hated no one. I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick. The doctors have told me about my sickness, and now I have some peace. I know how much harm I have caused. Thank God there will be no more harm that I can do. I believe that only the Lord Jesus Christ can save me from my sins. I ask for no consideration." The reason why he pointed out I hated no one is this. When they found out about Dahmer and his crimes, 10 of his 18 victims were African American. Oh. And because there was not a lot of police search, there was a lot of communities who believed that the police weren't looking for the victims because they were African American.
No, during this time that was a very big thing, and also why the theory is there isn't a lot of black serial killers is because the police would obviously would find the black man faster than they would ever find a white man.
Right.
Just the mentality at that time, and also during this time, that's why a lot of black victims were such an easy target because police didn't care enough to go looking for tragic. Them. Yeah, but I also don't think Dahmer was doing it by race. He was just doing it about what he found attractive.
He claimed, right, in his interviews, he claims that it was not racially fueled, that it was 100% he went after who he found attractive, and he obviously found African American men to be one of the most attractive.
Yeah. Which is totally fair, because I do too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think everyone does.
Yeah, obviously.
People get it. So we'll go to his death now. It was on November 28th of 1994. I was a wee little 4-month-old baby.
Little baby boy.
Dahmer and inmate Jesse Anderson were beaten to death by fellow inmate Christopher Scarver while on a work detail in the prison gym. Anderson was in prison for killing his wife, and Scarver was a schizophrenic convicted of first-degree murder. For reasons unknown, the guards left the three alone for 20 minutes, which is obviously fishy. They returned to find Anderson dead and Dahmer dying from severe head trauma. Dahmer died in the ambulance before reaching the hospital.
Yeah. So, yeah, yeah, I like that. I read something where apparently, like, in jail, too, he used to make his food look like humans.
Yeah.
Before he ate it, just to make people uncomfortable, and use ketchup as blood. Just to, like... And the thing is, like, I think there was something a little off about Dahmer, because it's not like he was fucking with anybody. He just, just what he did.
Yeah, I don't know. Man, it's such a weird one, because like I said, I really recommend anyone who listened to this and are fascinated by Dahmer...
Yeah.
Go watch his interview, because, it's eerie to hear him talk, because it's just so... calm.
It's so calm. He reminds me of Ed Kemper in the same sense of they just did fuck shit to do fuck shit sometimes. Honestly, real. Straight up. Well, I feel like Dahmer was also maybe that was also his attempt at attempt to fit in almost, because I think back of when Dahmer was in high school and he would do those things, be a prankster, that maybe in jail he was also kind of trying to do the same thing.
Right.
So maybe that's his motive for why he did it. But no, him and Kemper and I put as the most fascinating, just because of how calm, collective, and open they are about what they did.
Yeah. That's the thing. And Kemper is, the big friendly giant, but it's weird that they are so self-aware when they, Kemper was self-aware and he turned himself in after killing his mother and grandmother, right? I don't know what would have happened with Dahmer if Tracy didn't get away. Would he have continued one a week?
No.
Because Dahmer did not give himself up.
No, he just got caught.
And then he knew, once he was caught, he admitted to, yeah, I for sure knew this shit wasn't good, but like he just couldn't stop for whatever reason.
Right, and I think that because the thing is, Kemper had an end goal.
Yeah.
Dahmer didn't. So I don't know if Dahmer would have ever stopped. Realistically, I don't think he would have, but I don't know.
Yeah.
If that one guy didn't get away.
Now, I do want to harken back to an episode. I wish I could remember which one, but we talked about if Dahmer was alive during this century, would he have been able to find a community where he could have potentially let his sexual desires, aside from like the murdering and stuff, flourish and allow him to be not the serial killer, but some sort of, dom, like extreme dom.
Oh yeah, we were talking about this on a previous podcast of like whether or not we think Dahmer would be where he is if he was today. If he was born say he was born either the same time we were, or even 5 years after we were born. I don't know.
I don't want to say yes or no because that's putting too much pressure.
It's putting too much pressure, but also I think it might have made it easier. Well, the only reason why I feel like Dahmer maybe also wouldn't have gone down the path he went down was because, one, just kind of how society is now. Kids are, if they look like they're being abandoned, they're a little bit more
help.
There's more help. There's more treatment. We know the signs, obviously, to look for. So, and
I just wonder if like a 16-year-old Dahmer in like 2010 or 11 or 12 or whatever it looks like, would have been able to log onto the internet and found like fucked up videos that would have helped him not, or maybe at least gave him an outlet that wasn't actually doing it. Because I mean, I'm not saying that is good, a better. Like that's healthy to do that,
like a
but
solution.
would it have stopped him from taking that step?
That's a good idea. I think when you first asked me it, I thought of it kind of in a different perspective. I thought of it more in the sense of like, say he turned 18, like when I turned 18. So say me and Dahmer are the same age. If he turned 18 when I turned 18, that was when 50 Shades of Grey just came out. That was when people were getting more open about sex and talking about sex and talking about kinks. Especially kinks. And it wasn't like, it's now a joke, but like, you joke about it, but it also is still like I might make fun of you for it, but respect you. That's what you get off on.
Yeah.
But I think
it's much more culturally acceptable to have kinks, even if it is in the, the extreme side. Yeah,
so I think it's kind of, obviously it's hard to say, but I honestly don't think Dahmer would have became Jeffrey Dahmer if he was born like even this 98, the same year as I was born. In the same sense, if I think of it as one, there's online communities to help satisfy his loneliness.
Yeah.
There's then the BD. Being gay is totally okay.
Yep.
And talked about and preached about now, and the sub and dominatrix like subculture or the culture now is like so prevalent and so
it's open
and so accessible that like I don't know, like, and also too I don't think, because like when he was saying how like with his first victim and his second, basically like his first victim, he was saying like he didn't want him to leave him, is he would then maybe learn to change kind of that sub dom kind of mentality into more of like a dom, but like understanding of people can come back. So I think, I don't know, I really do think that Dahmer would have changed, or would have, if he was born like the same time we were born, he would be a different person today.
Right.
I don't think he would have gone down that road, mostly in the sense of like, I think his turning point was his abandonment of his mom, but I also think his turning point was also to him playing with dead animals.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely tough because there's so many things. I think that the alcohol at a young age.
Yeah, that's also a big factor.
Because I think that matured him in his thoughts and gave him
and stunt him, because also when you start drinking alcohol at such a young age, that's why they recommend 21, because your brain's not fully developed until you're 24, 25. So like that's why and there's also studies showing that if you don't start smoking nicotine or drinking until you're 21, you're less likely to get addicted than if you did it before.
Right.
So that's because your brain's not fully developed, and when you do ingest those things, it does stunt your brain growth, only because that's just how your brain works, unfortunately. But I do think the alcoholism was also a big key factor as well.
I think the alcoholism, I don't know about the surgery when he was a kid, how big that affected him, but it could be like some weird thing where like that surgery like made him interested in cutting animals up because he got cut up.
Yeah, maybe he was just more like curious. I don't know. I think he was just also a really curious boy without a guidance.
Yeah, I think that's what it is too. Like a big part of it is like if his parents were paying more attention to him from that young age to a teenager and would have stepped up when because I mean, if he was drinking as much as the claim is, there had to have been times where he was home drunk around his parents. Did they just not give a fuck? Did they just not know how to deal with it? Or did they just not notice it because they were so not present?
Because I think the main thing is he did it at school most of the time because he could hide it from his parents.
Right.
Because, like, at that time, no one cared about kids.
Right.
Like, especially in school. Like, you're getting bullied, grow up.
Yeah.
We all grow up.
Some dirt in it.
Yeah. So I think... I think he was just a too curious kid and didn't have the guidance he needs. I think that's kind of, like, the biggest thing. And the thing is that's hard about really it is because, like, you can make arguments that someone else had the exact same future, like the same childhood as Dahmer, but it was just slightly different. That's why they're not Dahmer.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's really interesting to think about. I would love to, like, you know, like an alternate reality where, like, you can control it. Like, I would love to, like, have that, like, idea of, like, if we were birthed this person today, where would they be at in 20 years?
Right.
Because I'd love to do that with every single serial killer. Because I honestly think that Ed Kemper probably would have still gone down the same path.
If he had the same parents, yeah.
If he had the same parents, he would have still gone down the same path. Dahmer, the only reason why I don't think he would have is because I feel like Dahmer was still socially involved with other kids and didn't... Also, because, like, his parents were absent, but they weren't abusive. Like, a lot of the other serial killers' parents were abusive. Dahmer's was more just absent, which is just as bad in a sense, but not as emotionally damaging. That because like Kemper, and if he had the same mom, would have gone down the same road. Gacy with the same dad probably would have gone down the same road, even if he was born today. Only in the sense of like there are. Because I imagine Gacy being born now and his dad still being that homophobic. Because I know there is that kind of still fear for a lot of the LGBT community is
absolutely
having to deal with parents who still have that mindset, because it's just weird to me that people don't accept.
And very prominent here in Utah, which is where we record out of.
Yeah, and also because like I don't know in Illinois how that's going. Like I don't know what they have any issues there. Like I know some parts in the South they still have conversion therapies.
Yeah. So
like obviously Gacy, if he was raised in the South, but like
we're still not where we need to be.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't know. I was trying to think like Richard Ramirez, but I'm like, oh.
His is such a weird one.
His is a weird one because like it was his cousin the whole time. So if he didn't have his cousin, he wouldn't have gone down that road.
It's definitely like, from what we've noticed so far, at least the trends I'm noticing, it seems to be one or two things: influence, or aloneness.
Yeah,
are causing the biggest things, right? Because like, you know, Dahmer seems like it was alone, like him being lonely.
Yeah.
Him not having people around him to guide him. Richard Ramirez, influenced into what he was doing. Yeah. Mary Bell, influenced.
Influenced and alone.
Alone. You know, Gacy, alone because his dad didn't really care for him.
Yeah, alone in abuse, so...
Yeah.
Went to outside perspectives. Bundy, those magazines.
Yeah.
Was that Bundy?
I don't remember. No, that was Richard.
That was Richard. No, because who else also had magazines? Oh, Kemper also had the crime magazines. That was also feel like quite a few of them had those crime magazines that they were able to focus on.
But I definitely think that regardless of everything so far, like, I don't think there's been a serial killer that we've covered that things haven't started prior to them being 18. Or, excuse me, how do I word this? What made them a serial killer is usually something that happened pre-18.
Yeah, pre-teen, pre-18. Something always happened in their childhood. So I know future down this next March Madness month, we're going to go into like the psychology more of it. So then I think we'll get a lot of our solid answers. So then we can be more knowledgeable in the future of like being like, well, remember the psychology episode? Peep it. And then we can like go on to that. But yeah, no, like, you know, it's very unfortunate, but
so
just,
yeah, speaking of March Madness, let's talk about what we got going.
Okay.
I am very excited to announce.
Yes.
Next week is going to be huge for us. Coming out next week is a Netflix documentary called Murder Among the Mormons.
Yeah.
Talking about a very interesting situation that happened in Utah about in 1985 bombings and forgeries and different things like that. And we live in Utah. We're not far off from this. But we are going to be interviewing Dory Olds, who is married to the gentleman that is getting covered in this Netflix documentary.
Which is
huge.
Very huge. That we get to talk to. Because, like, whenever we talk about these things, like, I always really want to, like, wonder about, like, people, the families, like, especially Gacy's first wife and his 2 kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just want to know I just want, like, a simple statement. I don't want them housed. If they willy-nilly came out and was like, here's my idea and here's my stories and thoughts, never contact me again, I would be like, you are a god. You did not have to do that. I want to hear what you think of someone who was in your life that did these heinous things. And we get to do that.
Right.
Next Saturday.
It's going to be exciting. Along with, we're going to do an episode about the psychology of serial killers.
Yes. I also pulled up the Google Calendar, which is on True Crime Junks, or the Gmail, truecrimejunks@gmail.com if you ever want to email us.
Yeah.
I have on the calendar, because we have the 6th is the interview podcast. I was thinking the 13th, maybe if we did like another person or like a disappearance or like something to filler, and then we did the psychology episodes and then read that book, The Psychology Test, or The Psychopath Test.
Yeah.
That one girl a couple episodes ago recommended.
Yes.
Because it's only a 7-hour read on Audible. And then maybe after that, finish out with my favorite part of True Crime Junks, cults. Just do another cult.
Yeah, I would love every episode for that month to be something unique.
Yeah.
This will be our first interview, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Who should we do for the 13th then?
That's what I was wondering, because like we've done a lot of serial killers, so I was thinking about maybe taking a step back from serial killers. Yeah. I feel like we've had the most fun doing cults, so that's why I was thinking that'd be a good wrap up.
Yeah.
But I was thinking like, I was thinking of a disappearance or like, I don't know, because that's what I was wondering. What?
Well, I know that we have a list of people that we.
You brought up many moons ago.
A fortnight ago.
Many moons ago. About this person, was it in Mexico or just South America, who like killed like over like 300 people?
Oh yeah.
Like something that's just like not really talked about, because you were telling me about it and I'm really curious more about it.
Let me try and see if I can find my list of what we had originally.
Yeah, because
about.
We originally started, we had a whole list of things we wanted to do, but then we kind of just based it off of what we were feeling. Which I kind of like more because sometimes, you make a list, but, like, you don't want to follow through.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot on our list that we had. Yeah. There was one that we haven't, the old lady killer that you had brought up. I don't really remember. It says Barzar.
Oh, that was a woman, because I just looked up. That's how I also found Mary Bell.
Right.
It's this woman, I think from Mexico, who her thing was she killed a lot of old ladies. That was, like, her niche, was, like, the ungodly amount of, like, old people she killed. And also I think her weird thing was, like, she was also, like, a wrestler. Like, the way she was able to travel everywhere, and that's why she was able to get away with it. Oh, wait, was it the first person?
I don't remember. Carl.
Oh, I don't think it was that one. No, because this was in... Whoa.
Pakistani serial killer?
Oh, that's different.
That's a lot. We also have on there, on the original list that we haven't done, the death of Michael Franke, which I've covered on Top Shelfers, which is a very fascinating one. Hitchhiker Girl.
Oh, I have her name literally right here, because I also Googled the zodiac signs, because I was just curious. And also, I want to talk about that in the psychology episode. Mostly because it's not very... Eileen Wuornos?
Yeah.
I mean, we could do her, because, she's a famous serial killer, but we never talked really about a woman. Like, the only other women is Mary Bell and Elizabeth Smart, but everything else has been kind of man-based.
Right.
We could talk about her, because,
that would be a good one.
Also, that would be really good, too, in the sense of, let me double-check my accuracy, because I love to be accurate. We could do her for the 13th, because March is Women's History Month.
Yeah. Okay, we gotta do that. The other one that's on here that I don't remember all I put was vampire ? Killer cover-up. I don't remember what we were referencing.
Oh, we were talking about, this guy who, really believed he was a vampire.
Yeah.
And that's, the basis of his murders was to get people's blood, but, I don't remember, or we were going to talk about the people who, the lifestyle of people, because that's a real thing that people do.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of both. I think there was someone specific that did murder people and drank their blood and claimed that they were a vampire, and then we were going to talk all about that and the just fascination and of the lifestyle. Yeah. And then, I think this is the other guy that had gotten proposed to us, Javad Iqbal, who's a serial killer in Pakistan, and confessed to the abuse and murder of 100 boys. That one could be big. I did get recommended a couple on our Facebook page, because we do now have a Facebook page that is for us only. Let me get to it here really quick and see if I can find the names of those individuals and see if maybe we are familiar. No. Jurassic Park is cool.
I love Jurassic Park.
So this was from Matt Duncan. Shout out to you on our Facebook. He says, I'm a huge fan of a ton of true crime, but my favorite case is the case of Tori Stafford and Michael Rafferty. I'd love to see you guys cover that someday. So we could definitely do that for you.
Yeah, we could do that as well. Would we take out Eileen, or would we take out the cult for that one?
Oh, we're keeping the cult.
We're keeping the cult?
I say we take out Eileen and do that one.
Okay. Sorry, while that's pulled up and I can write it correctly, Tori Stafford and I dated a Michael, and every time he had his name was spelled with the E in front of the A, so now every time I spell Michael, I have to remember to always put the A in front of the E, because I'm so used to putting the E in front of the A that my phone, I've used it so much that my phone just automatically puts the E in front of the A, so I have to remember that's not.
Well, that might be Michelle then, and I just have dyslexia.
No, that's correct. No, because the way he spelled it was backwards. He was,
okay.
Yeah, no, like his was, because like that was like the first thing he was like, oh, the E is for the A because it's spelled this way. Okay. But yeah, Michael.
Yeah, fun fact: your boy over here does have dyslexia. What's up with it?
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm illiterate. It's cool.
Yeah, it doesn't. The only thing that ever impacts me is just words. So every day.
Oh, no, I'm kidding. Mine's more of a when I try to speak or formulate sentences. When I tweet,
Lily Blondes.
Lily Blondes.
It's gonna be a T-shirt soon, by the way.
I'm so excited. I will buy that T-shirt in a heartbeat. But and also if you want the screenshot, so you can use the screenshot, I'll send it to you. But a funny story, not true crime related, if you want to hear it. So I made like a joke on Twitter that was like, at this point, I can be impaled by a sword or impaled by a dick, and I wouldn't care either way.
Hilarious.
Hilarious. But we were playing a drinking game last night, and one of the cards was go through your search history, and I was like, easy. I watch all my porn in incognito mode, so they're never going to catch me slipping. And so, but I forgot that the phrase like impaled by a dick. For some reason I was like, that's a sex thing, right? Like I was like, that's like, what, like you could use that. Like this tweet makes sense, but like in my head I was like, does that work? So I actually Googled impaled by a dick, and the first thing that came up was Pornhub. So I was like, okay, I'm on the right track. That's.
Oh man, you got caught slipping then.
I did get caught slipping because instantly afterwards I was like, oh okay, and then I had to explain to the group. I'm like, listen.
So you're the one that backing up, like, no guys, wait, listen.
Listen. But also like, I wouldn't have just searched. I just searched that willy-nilly because I was like, is that a phrase?
Yeah.
And it is, obviously. But, like, for some reason in my head, the way I talk, I know sometimes, like, doesn't kind of make sense. Because it's not all, I'm just not really grammar.
Me neither. Correct. That's my biggest struggle.
Correct. I'm not grammatically correct most of the time. So that's why, like, for me, I personally Googled that to make sure that my tweet made sense and it was funny.
Yeah. Great.
And it was. So,
no, the only time that I ever struggle with stuff is if I'm trying to read quickly.
Oh yeah.
Words will just shift on me, and then number strings. Like if I have to punch in like a fucking gift card code, it's gonna take me a minute because I'm like,
yeah.
And then I'll like flip the numbers up. And I'm like, wait, invalid. And then I'll have to fucking look at it again. I'm like, come the fuck on.
You're like, God.
I don't got time for this brain. Just look at the numbers like a normal person.
Right. You're like,
this ain't rocket science.
No, I get it. That's pretty cool. Or not pretty cool, but I get that. So it's like I'm fortunate I don't have that as much, but yeah, no, I think that would be really cool to do that case. And then also too, if we start doing the case and it's not quite enough information, we can always switch up.
Yeah.
Prior to that week. But yeah, this week, nevertheless, we're also going to keep doing one every week just for March Madness. Because I'm not a fan of sports, but
yeah,
March Madness sounds pretty cool when you're talking about true crime.
Yep, March Madness, and then when we get done with March Madness, we'll get back to our bi-weekly episodes.
Yeah.
And then we're hoping, well, I'm hoping by that point too, we can start putting out clips and stuff to fill the week.
Yeah, well, clips and like, I'll do like, I'm working on trying to like do some like, side projects and like side stories maybe. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do quite yet with that. If you have any suggestions, obviously let me know. If you want to see something from us, that would be really cool. I'm down for anything. Also too, by then I'll be living at home, so I'll be available literally to do anything anytime. Yeah. And I can stream from my own house.
See, I want to talk to you about this off camera. We can talk about it on camera.
Yeah. When
I get to a certain point, as far as like caught up on everything, I want to start doing videos for this channel similar to like someone like Nexpo. I don't know if you're familiar with his content. You would love it.
Nexpo?
But he does like 20-30 minute dives into random things across the world. It could be true crime or, you know, weird cases and different stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the way that he handles his videos are phenomenal, and I could never be on that level. Well, it'd take me a long time to be on that level, but I'd love to do, you know, 20-30 minute well edited, you know, clips that we could post like on our week off or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. I definitely know time will be so available for me soon enough.
Yep.
once I move. Which I also realize I'm moving in March Madness, which isn't a big deal. I just don't know why I play myself all the time.
Well,
it lags.
We can get it all figured out.
And, I'm not worried. I have spring break also during that week, so I'm basically planning on moving during spring break.
Perfect.
Basically.
So yeah, guys, look super forward to our next week. We're going to be having potentially one of the biggest moments in True Crime Drunk's history so far, and
it's gonna be awesome.
We'll be posting a lot about it on social media, and then come Saturday at 3 p.m. Be here or be square, because you're going to miss out on
fun topics.
Some really great content. Thank you guys who watched this live, everyone who is on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, all the other fun websites that are out there now. Thank you guys for giving a listen. I hope you enjoyed it. Drop a follow. Give us some tips on how we can perform better and what you want to see from us in the future. And we love you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.